With me today, I've got Rosalyn Santa Elena, and we're going to be talking about RevOps or revenue operations. What is it? What does it stand for? How does it work in organizations? All of those questions. And if you do have any questions about it, please put them in the chat and we'll answer them either as we go along or at the end, whatever. But we would love to have some of your questions as well. So, Rosalyn, as you've also got a dog behind you as well. You've got some
Do I have a
things
dog
behind you.
Oh, she's walking around.
You've got some things behind you, which if anybody knows me, they mean a lot to me. But and I know that they're your husbands. But anyway, so I'm not distracted by the one LRPs. Can you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm constantly there posting content and sharing. You can also find me at the RevOps Collective. The website is still a work in progress, but definitely check out the LinkedIn page and also check out the Revenue Engine podcast, which is a podcast that I host.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey, about how you got here? Because you've just recently, hopefully I'm going to get this right. You've recently just gone out by yourself.
That's
which
right.
is like a big, brave thing to do. I
Very
did this,
scary.
I did this with my business partner, Adam Gray. This is our 7th year. So
Wow.
I'm, respect to you. So tell us about your journey, about how you got here as well. And we'll give a shout out to the RevOps collection as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, definitely scary. Never wanted to be a solopreneur. But I started out my journey super early on in finance, moved over to, as I like to say, the dark side of sales and revenue back in early 2001 timeframe. And I've been leading, go-to-market and revenue operations teams since then. Lots of large companies, 5 SaaS startups, as well as I advise for a number of companies. But I'm super passionate about, go-to-market strategy and then revenue operations. So of course, when you suggested, hey, do you want to talk about RevOps? I'm like, yes, of course, would love to, anytime.
For me, it's a fascinating subject. I've written a chapter about it in one of my books because I just think it is such a fascinating subject. And I came across, and I work for an organization where there was all the things going on, like we had marketing and they had one strategy going in one direction. Sales were going off in a different direction. And we had a cold calling team, what would now be called an SDR team, doing something else. Different objectives, different strategy, different territories. That gives you some idea. And I was thinking, what could we do to make this so much better?
Yep.
Any suggestions?
And in comes revenue operations, right?
Yeah. So what is revenue operations?
Yeah. So I think if you ask different people, you'll get different flavors and possibly different answers. I think over the last couple of years, there's been a much more heightened awareness and a lot more, folks talking about it, right? I think with the global pandemic and just the market changes and things that have happened, if it has really brought to light some of the challenges that you mentioned, right? Those kind of everybody doing their own thing. So revenue operations to me is really the infrastructure that supports your end-to-end revenue process. And what do I mean by that is supporting from top of funnel to becoming a prospect, becoming a customer, and especially in the SaaS and recurring revenue model, that customer journey, right, begins really with the signing of that first document. Yeah. And so I really look at, from a people, process, technology, data, insights, and enablement perspective, that infrastructure to support all of those teams, whether it's marketing, it's sales, it's customer success, it's post-sales, including services and support, and partners as well, and channel that we always forget about, and then also through implementation and renewals. So I really look at it.
Because I was going to say, it's also the important part, isn't it? Which is that with on-premise, you sold something and you could basically ride off into the sunset because the people were using it for 10 years.
That's right.
Whereas with SaaS, they can switch it off. So the customer service and the renewal element is so important as part of the life cycle because you want them to sign up again.
That's right. And you want them to see that value, right? And be able to not only continue to renew, but to potentially expand, right? And grow within that customer base. And so that customer life cycle and helping to support that is really what I look at as RevOps's, charter, if you will. The objective is really to support revenue growth, revenue retention, but also provide that frictionless, seamless customer experience.
So what you're saying in effect is this: you've got this one person or persons team that is basically responsible for the whole strategy and objectives and measures for the whole of the revenue creation process from the beginning right to the end. Or in fact, it should go on forever, shouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also, aside from sort of those insights and sort of those goals and metrics, but also just think about the technology that has exploded, right? Before we just had an ERP, you talked about on-prem. We had Oracle or we had SAP and everything was pretty much done there. Now, easily a sales rep can have 20, 25 tools and apps that they have to work in every day. So keeping those all aligned and keeping the people aligned and empowered to use and leverage those tools, with the right process and governance. That's, from my perspective, RevOps' role. That sort of holistic body that kind of steps back and helps the product, helps the marketing team and sales team and product and finance and, all of the different teams that touch revenue and touch the customer, keeping everybody aligned and in sync.
So one of the questions that I always get asked is this sales taking over marketing, or is it marketing taking over sales, or what is it?
Yeah, so I don't think it's either. I think it's a separate function that really looks at revenue. I mean, we've seen the rise of this chief revenue officer, similarly to we've seen a rise of RevOps, right, over the last couple of years. And in a lot of cases, if you ask a lot of organizations, their CRO a lot of times is still the head of sales, right? But ideally, that
Yes.
chief revenue officer is really somebody who, like a RevOps leader, should be overseeing the entire customer life cycle, and be responsible for that. And I think a lot of companies still have, there's a lot of talk about, sales ops being rebranded as RevOps or marketing ops being branded. And yes, that is definitely the reality, but the goal or the objective of RevOps is not to be that rebranding, but to be an entity that truly looks over all of the revenue end to end.
Because some people have said to me, it's like having an internal consultant who in effect is looking at the different things and analyzing those. Now, we need to separate that from, so sales operations traditionally has been someone that's had a spreadsheet or access to things, and they would come up and say, we've got in our CRM, I remember in our CRM, 80% of everything that got that was input at sales stage 1 never turned into anything.
Mm.
And it was about someone, and it doesn't matter why, but it was about someone coming up with that fact and just going, oh yeah, why is that? And in fact, everything that got entered in the CRM at sales stage 3 generally converted. So it was, why is that? And it was about, and again, it didn't matter, but it was at the time, it's about finding the insight around that. Is that sales operations, or is that basically revenue operations?
Yeah. So, and traditionally, I think sales operations is focused in on sort of that piece of the funnel, right? But when you think about RevOps, they would be looking at every piece of the funnel and how we're engaging and how things are moving through the funnel and what's converting. And I think even more so when you talk about sort of stage 1 or stage 3 within an opportunity is defining what those are, right? And making sure that we're communicating that and everybody's on the same page, that everybody knows, how often you've been working in an organization where you say, oh, it's in stage 1, it's, whatever qualification or something like that. And if you ask 5 different reps, you get 5 different definitions of what that means.
6 different
right?
answers.
Exactly. And so part of RevOps role is to define that and make sure that it's communicated, everybody's enabled, the systems support those definitions, and the adoption and the governance across that people are using that stage the way it's intended. And then to your point, diving deeper into the insights of what is converting, is the stage 1 defined properly? Is that the right definition for stage 1? And then how, even more importantly, is how do we move things quicker through the funnel? Right? Because then you're starting to look at stage 1 to stage 2. What's the messaging that we're using? What's the engagement that we're having? And, how do we improve what we do in stage 1, the activities around that to progress things faster and have better outcomes and conversion rates? So I think there's a lot of that deeper insights, whereas in the past, like you and I both know, have worked in organizations where sales ops was more of a sales support, right? They helped book orders. They helped make sure that quotes looked clean and signatures were tied in and, that type of work, more like a sales support type of role versus a sales really accelerator and enabler.
So we've talked a lot. Would you say in what we've said, we now understand why we need RevOps?
I think that we're almost there. I honestly think that there's still a lot of folks who think, hey, we don't really need that. We're doing fine. We have dashboards and reports, and we have sales reps who can sell, and we're closing things. But I think the organizations that really understand and are really unleashing the true power of RevOps and not using them as a order taker administrative function, not viewing them that way, those are the ones who are now getting the real deeper insights that we're talking about and really driving efficiencies, driving optimization. And also, as we're all talking about for, the last 3 years, is everyone's trying to do, more with less. You keep hearing that. I like to say do better with less. Somebody said that to me a couple months ago, and I'm like, that really stuck with me. But I think the companies that are really embracing revenue operations and getting the right resources in to support the organization, those are the ones that are truly seeing not only where the business is headed or what the business is doing, but where does the business need to go, right? And help guide the business to where it needs to go.
So we've talked about lots of different activities. It sounds very, very resource intensive. And one of the questions that we got when we publicized this was,
Yeah.
is revenue operations it's just for big companies, isn't it? Which was the comment.
I actually think it's much more popular and prevalent in smaller organizations. When you get to larger organizations, that's when you start to have much, much more resources, right? You have more money, you have more budget, and then you get into being much more specialized, right? You have folks sitting in a marketing ops role or in a sales ops role, and not only sales ops, but they may just be compensation or just deals desk, or maybe they're just Salesforce, right? Versus in smaller companies, because they tend to be resource constrained, they hire. It's not uncommon. In fact, it's very common for it to be a team of one in a lot of these startups, right? It's a generalist who really has to do everything, do a little bit of everything. And then as the organization starts to mature, they start to bring in, more resources, either, higher level kind of leadership type roles, or they start just bringing more, right? A volume of people, number of people, and start to build out that organization.
And I think that, to use a sports analogy, sports has become so intricate to win the leagues or to win the cup.
Yes.
You've got to win every single game. It's not a case of saying we can have a draw here and we can lose this one and we're still going to win. You've got to basically squeeze every single cent out of the sales and marketing process to get the growth that you want. And that's about having at least one person looking at the different things and proactively looking, if we did this, I wonder what happened. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And I think also, I think people think a lot of terms of sort of all or nothing. Like we bring things into the funnel, then we convert and we win, right? But if you think about all the different steps that need to happen, from a customer first having interest in your product until they become a customer and then become a repeat customer, all those little steps, if we just made incremental tweaks, right? Better leads coming in, maybe it's a little bit more better scoring. Maybe we're redefining our ICP slightly and we're doing some testing there and we're getting the right leads to the right people. And maybe we improve SLAs in terms of when a BDR, SDR responds and the messaging that they respond with, right?
Yep.
And kind of make those tweaks across the funnel, those incremental,
It's
improvements.
incremental gains, isn't it?
Yes,
That,
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
it's the sports thing of, if we get in a wind tunnel and we actually it was the British cycling team that probably many cycling teams and swimming
Yeah.
teams that actually got into wind tunnels and stuff and realized if you pulled your elbows in, you got that little bit extra out of the
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the sports analogy because I have an image that I share in one of the classes that I teach around revenue operations. And it's an image of, all these small boats with all of the different teams in them, and they're all rowing efficiently and they're all going in the same direction and they're working really well. And then I show an image of one larger boat with everybody in the boat, right, rowing the same way, in the same direction, and so I think the improvements that you see when there is alignment, there's accountability, there's transparency across the entire team, you just start to optimize and you just drive better efficiencies when everybody understands the strategy, they understand the goals, they're all measured, with the same information, the same data. We could have a whole nother session on just talking about data quality and data importance. But I think, just having everybody aligned, you think about how much, incremental efficiencies and optimization, just better outcomes you can have.
So when in an organization's life cycle should you do this and implement RevOps? When is it something that you should implement?
Yeah, so I get asked that question quite a bit, and I always tell folks that, the earlier the better. Obviously, you want to invest as early as possible. Does that mean that you need to have a VP of RevOps, or does that mean that you have a full RevOps team? Absolutely not, right? But when you think about your business and where like in any case, if you think about what are your goals, right? Where do you want to achieve in the next 12, 6, 12, 24 months? And then think about what your current capabilities are and where those gaps are. Like, what are those gaps that are preventing you or could prevent you from attaining or achieving those goals? That's where you want to hire for, right? Sometimes it's just data, data and insights. You need somebody you have to really scrub your data and understand what's working and what's not, and help you test different paths to market. Or maybe you need more experience or more expertise and help on the CRM side, system side, maybe somebody who's more technical. So you'll see a lot of organizations start with like a technical resource, a CRM administrator, somebody kind of a generalist on the, sales or marketing side. And so you'll start small that way, and then you start to expand. But I guess the answer to that is really, it depends. There's no one size fits all. But I think the earlier you invest and the more you invest in the right talent and the right people, the faster you're going to help grow your business.
Which is someone's very kindly corrected me, which is it was Team Sky and David Brailford, and the accumulation of marginal gains. Yes, absolutely. So we started talking about the type of skills. So if we were going out and hiring, and we were thinking of starting a RevOps or starting to build that, what sort of skills would we be looking for?
Yeah. I think depending on where your biggest gaps are and what you need. And I think the other thing was, when you think about gaps, I should probably point out, you should also think about, the strength of your bench, right? Who do you have on the team that's already strong that maybe can cover certain parts of this, right? Maybe you have an IT person who's really technical and can cover some of the systems work. Maybe you have an FP&A person, finance person, and cover some of the planning and some of the maybe compensation or things like that. So think about what your strength of your bench is. Of course, if you have an unlimited budget and you can hire whoever you want, then yes, definitely go hire the best of the best. But I think when you're looking at ops people, I always tell people that I think ops people come from a certain mindset. A lot of it is the soft skills and the mindset, more so than, we don't go to school and get a degree in how to run revenue operations, right? So I think it's a lot about people who are have a growth mindset, but also are process focused, right? They're not afraid of data. They when they see chaos, they run to it. And this has been maybe my downfall. Every time I've seen chaos, I'm like, oh, tell me more.
Chaos, you run to it. Yeah, okay,
yeah.
like that.
Right? You run towards it. You're like, oh, tell me more, and how do I, make sense of the chaos? Those are the type of ops people. I think on the kind of that soft skills, it's that mindset. And then it's also the communication skills. I can't overemphasize how important it is, because this role is so cross-functional, and it works with every department in the organization, especially in a smaller company, right? We always talk about how nobody is safe from operations, right? We'll get into your business, because we obviously work with marketing and sales and customer success, but also finance and legal and HR when it comes to headcount questions or compensation questions. And then we also work with product, right? We should be working with product. If we're not, we should be, as well as in earlier stages. I've worked with engineering even. So I think, somebody who's very good at building relationships, really good at communication, but not that just written or verbal or able to present, but the ability to, drive consensus and influence, because a lot of times you don't have the authority. So you need to be able to build credibility and be able to influence. And then on the other side, it's all of the more technical skills. I think it's depending on where you are at and who you have on the team, but you'll probably want someone who is system savvy. They understand how systems work. They have really good project management and change management expertise, because a lot of times they're managing large projects or even small projects, and they have to bring everybody along for that journey. So I think that's really key. And then there's more of the more specific skill sets if you're, in a Salesforce or a Marketo or, whatever systems that you use.
I think the communication is so important.
Absolutely. And in any role.
In any role, yes.
But especially.
But from a RevOps, you can be in a situation where, I've worked in organizations where literally sales and marketing were pretty much at war with each other.
Yes.
And
I have been there as well.
throwing rocks at each other with through email,
Yes.
It took 18 months and a lot of blood on the wall to basically get to a situation where in effect the two organizations, while separate, basically were running together. And that, you can be in a toxic part of the business. So that ability to communicate and ability to communicate, classic, what's a lead? What does sales stage 1 mean? And having all those common pieces of language that we need. Otherwise, we're just talking at cross purposes.
Yeah, I think that ability to influence, drive consensus, it's so incredibly key, because you are the one who is trying to drive that alignment. And these are folks, a lot of times you're working with leadership, and they are, people are passionate about their area of expertise. And a lot of times they, see just their area, right? And that's why it's really important to be able to open it up, have that RevOps kind of that holistic view, to open it up to everyone, drive visibility and transparency so that we can start to work together and work better together.
Rosalyn, it's been fascinating. Thank you so much for coming on
Thank
and
you for
sharing
having
your
me.
we've dived into quite a lot of detail. Certainly exhausted all my notes that I've got down here. Remind people where they can get hold of you.
Yeah, definitely follow me on LinkedIn, connect with me. I post a lot of content there. Check out the RevOps Collective LinkedIn page. I also post a lot of content there. And starting in January, we're going to have quite a bit of new events and some new initiatives coming out.
So tell us more about the RevOps Collective.
Yeah, so the RevOps Collective really focused in on 4 key pillars. 1, the strategic and advisory work for organizations around your go-to-market strategy and RevOps, kind of why do you need to invest in it, how to build, scale, and grow it. And then the second pillar is around fractional RevOps, so companies that aren't ready for that leader, but need some help with vision and framework and, kind of what does that look like for me short-term and long-term. And then around coaching and training. So one of the things that I do quite a bit is train and kind of help the next generation of RevOps leaders get to where they need to go. And a lot of that is the soft skills too, Tim, as you mentioned, right? It's the communication.
So this is a Slack group, isn't it? Where in effect a community that people can join. And
so that's actually the 4th. Yep. So that's the 4th pillar. Absolutely. And the Slack community will be coming out early in January. So I'll start to open that up and bring folks in, and it will be very focused on revenue operations. There's tons of great communities that, help with RevOps and revenue broadly, but what I'm looking to really help do is bring a small community of true, RevOps professionals where we can, it's a safe place, as I always call it, it's ops therapy, because it's a place where we can, share ideas and learn from each other and start to build that network for ourselves, for folks who don't have a large network to go lean on.
Rosalyn, thank you so much for coming in and talking about RevOps today. It's good that we gave a shout out to the RevOps Collective and community.
Thank you.
Because it's important that we all support each other in roles and learn from each other. So thank you so much for coming in, and speak to you soon.
Okay, thank you.